Hi everybody, I'm Raven the Swift, and today we're doing a Raven reviews of Ignatius versus Warlord Gun. This is going to be a first to 10 review. If you've never seen any of my reviews before, I basically take reviews from all across the foam fighting skill spectrum, and I provide some kind of lesson or instruction for these fighters to help them along their path. Just like any of my other reviews, I don't discuss what shots were and were not taken, as I find it not to be productive to the video or to a lesson. And we just talk about what we're observing in the fight and how I can possibly help these guys. Anyways, let's get into it and let's go. Sir Gun there in the maroon. He's been a warlord for a few years now. There's that board side shoulder shot. Ignatius tends to get hit there quite a bit. He leaves that, he constructs that into his guard as some type of bait, I think. But you can see him raise his shield there, but got hit in the leg. One thing I kind of want to talk about before we continue forward, because I feel like I should have mentioned this before. Ignatius is a very adept feint fighter. He's very good at using deception and smoke to draw out his opponent. And Gun is very good at throwing direct attacks from a relatively stationary position. He's not a very mobile person, and because of that, he's very, very good at throwing attacks, and he's very, very good at just using good aggression and commitment to his shots to kill his opponents. Now, styles make matchups, basically. And you have these two fighters who are almost juxtaposition to one another, an exact opposite. So I'm really curious to see how these fighters adapt and what they're going to do. You can tell by that first exchange that Gun was really committing to all those attacks. And it's going to make it very hard for Ignatius to possibly let any type of blow get by. Especially if he's not committing to his defense possibly as much as he needs to be. So let's just see how this goes stylistically and take that with into mind as we watch these. They side mode. So you can see their gun starting from that stationary position, just letting Ignatius come to range, and then he just threw big shots coming into it. If you can kind of imagine, it's kind of like fighting against a howitzer as you're a mobile unit. Again, I'm going to go back real quick. Again, Gun there with those committed attacks. They side mode. Nice. That's good moves by Ignatius. I really like the way he was moving inside that pocket there and staying evasive. Good, good, good. Good feint, good positioning there with his footwork. That's exactly how you attack a stationary opponent. So, as I said, it's how you attack a stationary target. If you kind of want to look at the analogy of Gun being a howitzer here, he doesn't use a lot of mobility laterally or back and forth, and he throws big shots at his opponent. And kind of how you deal with that is in a couple different ways. Is if I'm a light mobile fighter, I might want to draw out one of his attacks, or I might want to suppress him with aggression, right? And because he's only throwing a couple attacks, but they're really committed attacks. You either need to make sure that you get your block on it and you have solid defense. And the benefit of that is because he's not throwing so many shots is that you don't actually have to watch for feints that much. Because he's committing so much of his body to those attacks, you don't have to possibly worry about this shot being directed somewhere else. You don't have to worry about all kinds of misdirection and stuff like that. As if your guard is constructed properly and you have a solid defense, a lot of the worry goes away there. And if you can do that while moving, you can use your game plan and you can press your offense and your game plan upon your opponent, which is always the thing that we want to do anyway. Defensively speaking, for Gun, he's going to want to throw a lot of shots at Ignatius to stop him from getting into range on him, right? They're just fighting over this space between them, and whoever controls that space and whoever can navigate it the best, who's going to be able to control their opponent is the person that's going to be able to win. Ooh, that was a long attack by Ignatius. Got hit in the arm. Gun throws particularly hard. He's one of the most hard-hitting fighters I've ever encountered. Good defense there by Gun. There's those big committed shots to his guard. You got to really watch for those as Ignatius is coming into range. I think combos have a good place here for Ignatius in suppressing his opponent. Throwing combos to hamper his opponent's guard, letting him close range. That's another option you can look at besides throwing smoke. When I say throwing smoke, throwing smoke is just a colloquialism for throwing a lot of misdirection and deception into the space between you and your opponent. So you can think about like throwing a smoke grenade if you play first-person shooters, right? You're using it to disguise the field so that you can move and navigate through it and attack your opponent. So that's just what throwing smoke means if you're particularly interested in what that meant. Board side shoulder there by Gun. Let's go back to that. So they're basically stationary and their lead foots are basically in line with one another. Guns is slightly turned out a little bit to the outside, which gives him a slight advantage throwing board side shoulder. And if you look, Ignatius's hips are turned slightly in. This is going to be expose his board side shoulder just a little bit, and we're going to see how Gun takes his first step. That first step was forward and to the outside towards Ignatius's board side shoulder. Now, he did that off Ignatius moving towards the inside and moving away from him. Ignatius tried to throw a cross arm counter there, but he's too far away. So this started off as a decent amount of effort you want to put into your attack when you're attacking somebody. The issue is the follow-up attack was so long, and by long I mean it took a long time to fulfill and come to fruition, that Gun had plenty of time to throw a good attack from a consolidated position, which ended up in being a board side sort of wrap. So we're going to go back real quick. You're going to see Ignatius throw this little pop jab, which is great, but then the follow-up is just too long. He really needs to capitalize much quicker and make sure his shield is in the proper position so he's not getting hit on the outside when he's moving in towards his opponent. I really like throwing a cross and hampering up my opponent's guard and clogging the lane or clogging the space between me and my opponent. Good follow-up there by Ignatius. I think maybe he might want to do playing at range a little bit more, try to bait out Gun's attack. But Gun is almost always committing after Ignatius has already done something. So, I don't know. He's got to play with it and see what works. I like that combo there. It's just that second shot left his guard open a lot. Honestly, I would like to see Ignatius start throwing double legs against Gun. Or at least a single leg. Ooh, nice low stab. I like that. Board side shoulder there again. That's probably the fourth one I've seen. And it's not off of a lot of feints. It's just a board side shoulder wrap. Good cross attack. That was really good. For those who can't see what's going on, Gun is throwing so hard, he's actually smashing his opponent's guard. And by smashing, I mean he's physically manipulating his opponent's guard when he throws the attack. So maybe Ignatius has his guard possibly where he thinks it's okay. But if he lacks the structure behind that position, then it'll fold. And in that, maybe his hand's too low, and Gun's sword is coming across, pushing Ignatius' sword out of the way, which allows that cross to happen. Or with a shield, he's hitting that shield so hard, he might be pushing Ignatius' hand down and exposing the shield side shoulder. See, that was oh man, that would have been great. Did you get that? Oh, dang it. There's a lot of opportunity there for Ignatius. So I'm going to go back and show you how you exploit an opponent from range. And now that Ignatius has done it, he could possibly do it in the next frame. Now watch when Gun goes to attack him. Gun whiffed his attack. He cannot move his feet. His torso is almost parallel to the ground. His back foot is up. If you have the intention and you have the initiative, you can throw a counter off that because your opponent cannot move. And he almost does it again. When he threw low at Ignatius' hip, if he could have got that block off, he could have thrown a cross-eyed shoulder at Gun. But you only got so many of those opportunities in an exchange, you know? Almost got that arm. Need to get that hand a little bit more out into the outside. Nice. Almost. He committed a little too hard to that first attack against Gun. I would say the adjustment here is that if I pause the frame, so because Ignatius committed so hard to this cross attack, Gun is able to throw a good counter after it, really. And because Ignatius committed so hard to it and committed so many resources, getting back to a stance and being able to block whatever counter Gun is going to have is going to be very hard. In this case, Gun was able to throw a great cross counter against Ignatius to that. So when you're making these attacks onto your opponent, you need to be kind of conservative at first and then slowly open up as things develop. You certainly need to get past the first or second shot before you really commit to something. There's those heavy shots by Gun. Those are great shots. So that's the end of the video. They finished. Gun controlled Ignatius really technically. That was a clinic by Gun. But that's Gun's fighting style. And all of fighting is pretty much not letting your opponent do what they're strong at and you doing what you're good at. Or meeting them somewhere where they can't do something and you can do something slightly better than them. But you should certainly always try to draw them out of what they're strong at. In this case for Gun, it's standing there and throwing really heavy shots. So I would say in the future, Ignatius needs to be a little bit more patient and be a little bit more progressive in how he opens up his attacks. And when I say progressive, it's progressively making control over your opponent as you start an exchange with them, or as I come in an exchange range, right? I need to progressively get more and more control. I need to progressively build context against them. And context is like, I threw to one side of your board, or I threw to one side of your body, and I use that stimulus and I use that conditioning to manipulate my opponent. And I got to do that just progressively over steps. This is really common when we have a smaller fighter and a taller fighter, or a fighter who's stationary and one who's more mobile in this case. This is a great example of that disparage, and I'm telling you the thing that would help a lot. So for you guys out there watching, if you're a smaller fighter and you fight tall people like that, you need to be progressive. You need to work on slowly rooting them out of that position. There's tons of analogies and analogs I could bring in from tactics and strategy of ancient medieval warfare or whatever. Imagine it like sieging a castle, or you can imagine it like charging a howitzer if you were a footman or something like that. These are analogous, right? And they're similar. So yeah, that's what you should do when you're fighting tall people who throw really heavy shots. Anyways, this has been Raven Reviews. If you'd like your film to be reviewed, you can join my Discord channel at Swift Combat and Fitness. I do coaching and personal training and stuff like that. So if you're interested in getting better at foam fighting, contact me. You can contact me through Facebook or on my Discord channel. If you are looking to get better at foam fighting and you're looking to get in the competitive scene, one of the best things you can possibly do is increase the equipment that you use to have a higher quality to it. That way you can better express your skill set. To that end, our channel is sponsored by Optimum Arms. They make the best foam fighting and steel fighting equipment in the United States, bar none. Their equipment is very good. And yeah, you should check out their website, OptimumArms.com. And I'll check you guys next time. See ya.